Good morning. My name is Rich Sloma. Welcome to today's New York State Archives presentation of real-life use of ECMS, or Electronic Content Management Systems, in local governments. Today's moderator is Maria McCashion. The session is being recorded and will be available for future viewing. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat box to the right of your screen, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. I also wanted to add, please remember to select all participants when you submit your chat, before you submit your chat, so that all of our panelists can see your question. And at this point in time, I will pass it over to Maria.
Thank you, Rich. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, Real Life Use of ECMS in Local Governments. Today, I'll start the webinar with a brief definition of ECMS, or Electronic Content Management Systems. And then we're grateful to have presenters who were kind enough to demonstrate their government's ECMS. The Town of Dover and Albany County Hall of Records will discuss and provide live demonstrations of their systems for about 20 minutes each. Both will be using a system called Laserfiche. Please note that the State Archives does not promote the brand Laserfiche. It just happens to be software that they both use. And it is software that we fund in our grant program because it can manage records. But there are many other brands that have similar capabilities. Also, both have systems with records management applications. These applications can apply retention to individual record series, which are also known as document types in the software. But even without a records management applications, these systems also have index fields that can be used to indicate destroy dates and permanent records. In other words, they can manage records. So these systems have the ability to apply retention and disposition to records in the system. And that's one of the main reasons that we fund them. That said, the focus of today's demonstrations will be on using an ECMS for scanning local government records to improve records use and access. Both the town and the county began using their systems with a focus on reformatting permanent record series. So while we hope to bring you an ECMS demo that focuses more on the retention and disposition side at some point, today we'll be showing you other features for managing records in an ECMS. And as Rich mentioned, following the presentation, we will have time for questions. So throughout the presentation, if a question comes to mind, feel free to type it in the chat box. And as Rich mentioned, please send the question to all participants. So what is an ECMS, or an Electronic Content Management System? So like the slide says, it's a central technology platform used to capture, manage, store, preserve, and deliver electronic content. So the central means it's one location to store and manage electronic records. So think an inactive record storage, quote unquote, room for electronic records. It's a technology platform, so it's specialized software, it's a system on a server, or it can be cloud-based. It can capture or enter content. It can manage records, so using index terms by applying security and permission rights, retention periods, among other things. It can also preserve records. It can care for an electronic record by archiving it and making sure it's accessible long-term. And it can deliver electronic content. It can make it easy to find an electronic record that you're searching for based on the content that you enter up front, like the indexing terms. So think of labeling and organizing boxes of paper records only virtually and much more automated. And there are terms other than ECMS that are often used interchangeably to describe similar systems and capabilities. Terms like imaging systems, or electronic document management systems, or electronic records management systems, or enterprise content management systems. Keep in mind they don't all do the same things. So it's important to determine the unique needs of your organization first, draw up a list of specifications, and then choose a system to suit those needs, which may be some or all of the functions that we'll demonstrate today. So our first presenter is Katie Palmerhouse, and she is the Town of Dover Town Clerk, and you may recognize her from our previous ECMS webinar. Katie will begin with a brief description of the benefits of their ECMS for staff, residents, and the general public. Next, she'll review a few terms to describe their ECMS folder structure, the purpose of assigning a template, the process for how a file moves from a scanned document into the specific folder for storage and retention. And then she'll demonstrate the actual scanning, assigning a file template, and its workflow process to a record series folder in their ECMS. Katie, thank you very much for being here today. Let me pass you the controls so that you can begin.
Thank you, Maria, and good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be a part of today's presentation and very thankful to the State Archives for the wonderful resource they are to those of us who are records management officers across New York State. In 2015, the Town of Dover, with 3 neighboring communities, the Town of Amenia, Beekman, and Northeast, received a local government records management improvement fund grant to purchase, share, and implement an intermunicipal electronic records management system, or what we call a shared ECMS. In our collaboration, each municipality has its own repository, and the record series we scan are not exactly alike, but in many cases, we have digitized similar record series that are most useful to town officials and colleagues, our residents, and the general public. Let me begin by showing you a bit of the public side of our shared ECMS, or the Public Records Portal, where residents and the public can view documents of interest that we've posted to the portal through a link on our website. This is our town's website. To reach the public portal, we go to the tab at the top, and we go to Search Public Records or Land Use Projects. And then it takes them to the landing page that our 3 communities share for access to our ECMS.
Oh, Katie, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Certainly.
I'm not sure you're advancing your screens. Can someone else confirm that?
Yes, I'm not seeing the shared screen either.
Okay, let me just share my desktop. Is that better?
Okay, so we've got your desktop now, yes.
Oh, so sorry. Thank you for letting me know.
Did you want to show the individual screens in the PowerPoint?
I'm going to return to that if that's all right.
Sure, okay.
All right, great. So let me just give you an idea of how our shared ECMS has a public side as well as a municipal side. So you can see here is our town website, and each of our shared service ECMS partners has a link to the public portal through their websites as well. So I've kind of gotten to that page already. So I linked through the website to our landing page, and this is in all of our 3 communities. So I click on Browse to reach our public portal just for the Town of Dover. And this is Laserfiche, but the public-facing side. And these are some of the documents that we have available for the public to view at their convenience, 24/7. As documents come in of interest, we can post them. Something that's very popular is our land use projects of public interest. These are scanned documents in Laserfiche. And residents can keep track of planning or land use development projects by going to the website and taking a look at a particular project that's in application. And we keep them up to date so that as the project progresses from its review to potential approval, residents can visit as their interest is. Board minutes as well. So many of our boards have monthly meetings, so their minutes are posted. We have our full collection of town board minutes from our very beginning in 1807 right up till this year. So that's a way that our shared ECMS is beneficial to the public, and actually we can view our partners' public portals as well. Great. So now, I can get back to our page. Is the slideshow available that I could return to?
Katie, you'd have to stop sharing to do that.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Okay. So, great. The real life use of an ECMS is all about the benefits it provides in helping perform municipal operations that keep a government running efficiently and effectively. The left side of the slide presents a short list of primary benefits that we feel having an electronic access to town records provides over the course of their required retention period. Dover began digitizing records in 2008 with an earlier version of Laserfiche, and our repository currently contains about 600,000 documents and images. Our shared ECMS partners started digitizing records in about 2016, and our entire shared ECMS system currently contains about 1 million documents and images. The screenshot at the right side of the slide shows a list of master folders in our Dover repository. Each master folder has numerous subfolders where scanned records are stored. Just like there is security for each municipality by having their own repository, documents in the Dover repository are not available to all town staff. Access to master folders is regulated by a system of rights for a shared ECMS user or group. For instance, an administrator will have rights to delete a document. A record scanning user will have rights to scan and apply a template to a document. And a read-only user will only have rights to search, view, download, or export a document. I realize I've started to use some terms like master folder, record series, and template. So let me briefly describe some of those functions on this slide with these non-technical definitions. Many of these terms are self-explanatory, but for the sake of clarity, here are brief descriptions of the terms we commonly use in our intermunicipal records management partnership. We refer to our records management system as the shared ECMS because it's shared between our three communities. Our master folders are folders with the names of departments or municipal functions that generally contain multiple subfolders where records are scanned and stored. Record series folders are the folders that correspond with documents listed in the LGS-1 schedule or documents that have some required retention period. This is where individual documents will be scanned and reside, and they can be viewed, downloaded, or exported if or as needed. The template and fields are data that are assigned to help name or identify a document in order to find it more easily when conducting a search for an electronic document. And lastly, workflow in our shared ECMS refers to a process when a document is scanned and the fields and template are assigned, it is saved, and the electronic document is automatically moved to the correct folder to help avoid user error in naming or importing a scanned file to a folder. For my presentation, I'm going to demonstrate digitizing two types of records that help town officials and staff access the information they need to do their work without relying on my office to retrieve inactive paper-based files that could delay getting essential information they need. Each month, the town pays approximately 150 invoices to vendors that are stored for their 6-year retention period. It generally takes about 24 cubic feet or 24 banker's boxes of space in our record storage room, a volume comparable to one full 6-shelf metal storage unit. Before implementing our shared ECMS, a manual search and retrieval of a purchase order from the records room could easily take 30 minutes to an hour depending upon various factors, from putting a pause on our own work, locating the storage box, and then retrieving and providing and then refiling the record. Since implementing our shared ECMS, most town staff in Dover have access to electronic versions of the purchase orders to obtain the information they need, whether it's a payment date, a vendor's name, or perhaps an item number. And this convenience saves everyone precious time for both waiting for a record or in retrieving it. Digitizing purchase orders is an example of how electronic records management provides an internal town benefit for officials and town staff to access information when they need it, and the option to review the document for the exact or additional information they need. Second, I'll demonstrate scanning and assigning a template for some building department records. There are approximately 3,800 land parcels in Dover. Our shared ECMS has a master folder named Dover Parcels, where each parcel has a subfolder by its unique parcel number. Her building department clerk now scans to electronic parcel subfolders at the time of a transaction. The town also employs a part-time records clerk who scans legacy or paper-based records whenever a FOIL is received. And if a parcel has a new development, the planning board secretary now requests electronic copies of land use applications, site plans, and planning-related documents that are imported into a planning subfolder in the Dover Parcels folder. Digitizing building and planning files with access and storage through the Dover Parcels folder in our shared ECMS provides the most efficient and effective way for town staff, including those like the assessor, the building inspector, the code enforcement officer, town clerk, planning department secretary, and planning board, to access, review, and compile, circulate, and provide information on building and land use projects across town departments. Now I'll demonstrate how to scan and assign a template for a town purchase order, and then I'll scan a few building department documents and file them in the electronic document that corresponds with the parcel folder number. So here's the purchase order I'm going to scan, and here's our flatbed scanner. And now it brings up the actual scanning page, so that's where the scanner will actually pull the document through.
Katie, will you share your web page or share your screen so that we can see your Laserfish?
Certainly. So I've just placed the document in the scanner feeder. And you can see here is the list of different master folders. And because I'm going to assign a template, I'm going to actually scan it into the incoming folder. So then as they're scanned, they appear in thumbnails at the bottom of the screen. And also I can see that it came through in the incoming folder. So now I check each page for quality control, make sure the information is clear to read, that the page is properly positioned, and that especially that all the pages are there. And in this case, it's a purchase order for a classified advertisement. Just for some verification, the document is actually set up that it's going to be scanned in letter size with the feeder so that I'll cover both sides of the page if it were double-sided. We've chosen to do it in black and white to save actually on the use of color in the system and at a resolution of 300 dpi. So even though I could confirm that it's a part of the settings of the computer. Then I go to the command to store. And then I go over to the incoming folder and just refresh. And it's moved from the scanning side of the function of the process over to the actual side where I can put on the template and name the fields. So here's the document. And I'm going next to assign the template. We use the term vouchers in the past, but now we actually use the term purchase orders. But for the benefit of having it set up in the past, we just keep vouchers for the benefit. The information on the individual fields here, the information in what they call the template, is right on the purchase order or on the document itself. So I'll put in the actual voucher number, the date, which I'll use is January 14th, 2022. The vendor name, which is up here, POUGH002. And then put the date to be paid as of May 25th. So once all the fields are entered, just to check them over and confirm, and I know that the number of pages are there and the quality is as well been checked, I go up and save it. And the workflow has taken it out of the scanning processing page into where it will be stored. So I know that we keep our vouchers in this folder, and I can open the voucher master folder, go down to 2022, and there it is. So that's an example of how we would use vouchers to be able to have it stored during its 6-year retention, and at the same time have it available for our colleagues who might need it for a variety of different reasons. Now I'll scan some building records into the Dover parcels file. So I'm going to go to that particular file. Now this will bring up a list of all the different parcels in Dover. As I mentioned, there are about 3,800 parcels. So each individual parcel has an identifier that we use. so that even if an owner changes or an applicant or project changes through the years, it's always associated with this particular parcel. So in this case, for kind of the sake of efficiency, I'm going to scan into a file, a parcel folder I've created with lots of O's. Those are practice ones from yesterday. Let me just take care of those. Okay. My next scan is going to be a series of different building department files. So it's scanned into incoming in the Dover parcels. So I have to make sure that I choose the right way that it will be entered into Laserfiche. Again, the documents themselves show up in the thumbnail, so I can take a look at each one. And this is a little different than the voucher, which would be one document that's going to kind of have all its pages associated with each other. This one has different documents that will be assigned templates in a different choice. So I think I would like to separate these documents because they're going to go into different areas of a building department electronic file. So I can do that pretty easily. I go to the page afterwards where I want to split, and there's a command that says split the page. And then if you notice up here, the first page, which had all the documents, is now split. So now the second page is there. I can go to the next page after and split that document. Go to the next page after and split. Because each of these really has its own file to be have template for. So now these documents are all separated so that I can apply different templates to them. I'm going to store them. Then come over to this side, refresh. Take a look up here, maybe the command, well, there they are. So in real life, sometimes things work a little differently. So I'm going to cut these and put them into that folder. How easy is that? So there they are, all in the correct building Dover parcel file. So let you take a look at the other types of templates we can use. So here was our first planning of building department document, a building permit. So I'll go down to the corresponding template that we'll use, and I'll complete the information. So I'm going to use the 18th as our day of the document, and the grid number, which I'll take from the document itself. This is a town of Dover address, so the applicant would be the town of Dover. The property is the town of Dover. It's a building department file. And in this case, we have a drop-down menu of lots of different documents that this could be assigned to. So in this case, it's a building permit. And it says on the document that it is a commercial renovation. The permit number is right under the title of building permit. and the zoning district can be applied as well. So once the template is applied, I can save it. And then the document changes color. I'll drag the document into incoming. It'll ask confirm that I want to move it. And it's gone. I'll check under building permits, and there it is. Likewise, for the sake of time, the other documents would also have similar processes of template assignment. In this case, a certificate of occupancy would likewise have the date, the grid number, and other information that's listed right on there. I was able to do these for practice before, so I can show you that in the building folder, there's not only the building permit that we just put in, but there's also the certificate with the correct template on it. A CO search that we scanned in. The insurance document. And one of the files was actually a map, which we refer to as parcel information. So at the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned the search and retrieval process for a purchase order in paper format often varied from 30 to 60 minutes. However, with digitized records, it literally now takes seconds to enter a document and be able to search for it. And they're available whenever a town colleague needs them. If I'm not in the office, if I'm with a customer, if I'm at a meeting, or even if I'm away, my colleagues can still access the information they need. And having digitized building and planning documents is an invaluable resource to specific town departments so that electronic parcels are available to them 24/7 as well. So they can review them for important things that might have to do with a home sale or an assessment, a code violation, or even a building inspector can view a document in the field where they might be doing an on-site inspection or perhaps in an unforeseen incident. Let me close with the reflection that implementing electronic records management has truly been transformative for Dover, and I believe for our fellow ECMS communities. It's so deeply rewarding for me to be able to help residents, my own town colleagues, and even other municipal colleagues in our neighboring communities through our collaboration. Even during the pandemic, through remote connections from our work computers, many town staff could still access electronic records they needed to perform their duties and help maintain essential town services and serve the public as best we could, despite having limited access to town hall. If any of our participants are interested in learning more about electronic records management, I'm more than glad to talk with them individually. Thank you, Maria, for inviting me to present our real-life use of ECMS, and I'll turn things back to you.
Thank you so much, Katie. That was fantastic. Okay, our next presenters are Ricardo Wright-Ramos. He's an archivist. Just double checking. Did I advance the slides to Albany County?
Doesn't look like it. There it is.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Thanks, Ricardo. Our next presenters are Ricardo Wright-Ramos. He's an archivist at the Albany County Hall of Records, and Anastasia O'Neill. She's an electronic records management technician at the Albany County Hall of Records. Ricardo is here. He's going to begin with an overview of the county's ECMS program, and then Anna will follow Ricardo with demonstrations of how their system is used to manage marriage records, deed books, naturalization, and other records. Thank you very much for being here today. Let me pass the ball to you, Ricardo.
Sounds good. All right.
There we go.
Thank you so much for inviting us to be here. We're really happy and excited. So as Maria was saying, my name is Ricardo Wright-Ramos. I'm joined by Anastasia O'Neill. We're from the Albany County Hall of Records. Just a little bit about us real quick. We are the Archives and the Records Center for both the County of Albany and the City of Albany. So we have about 150,000 square feet total storage for physical records here. And we've been moving into the electronics records management over the last couple of years, trying to get as much of this stuff digitized as possible because a lot of our archival holdings are fragile. We don't want to handle them as much. We want to make them easier to access for customers and for county and city agencies. So over the last few years, we've had a lot of success using Laserfiche to digitize a lot of our archival holdings. We've been extremely fortunate to work with the State Education Department on 3 local government records management improvement fund grants. The very first one we did in 2017, 2018 helped us pay for Laserfiche. We paid for Laserfiche entirely through that grant, and we also worked with the City of Albany to digitize marriage records from 1949 all the way up through 2017 at that time. We digitized and indexed all of those marriage records, so they're all fully searchable in Laserfiche. And since that time, the city has maintained this repository and has been keeping them up to date. So they've been, they love it over there over at the city clerk's office. They use it every single day, which is fantastic. The second grant that we did, a big portion of that was we digitized just over 1,000 deed books. We did deed volume number 986 through deed book 2004. And we also used the optical character recognition software that comes packaged with Laserfiche on every single one of those books. So all of those deed books are fully text searchable, which has been a fantastic boon for trying to search through about 20 years worth of deeds in a couple of seconds rather than having to grab indices and look for grantors and grantees and back and forth from the microfilm machines and everything like that. And then that grant was also a shared service grant with the City of Albany. Again, we did a number of building records for their building department. And then most recently, we did an LGRMIF grant, which was easily our most ambitious and challenging one. For the county clerk's office, we digitized all of the pistol permits that they hold there. They hold the pistol permits for the county and the city. So that was about 50 years worth of pistol permits that were digitized. All of those were paper records, about 150 cubic feet of paper records that we had to go retrieve from their office and bring to the vendor to have them digitized and indexed. And then bring them back. And then alongside that, we reached out to one of our municipalities, the town of Colony, and brought them into the fold. So they had digitized all of their vital records, comptroller records, contracts, things like that. And they've been keeping their repository up to date with burial permits and things like that as well. So they're really benefiting from it tremendously. But to give you a more in-depth look at how we use this software on a day-to-day basis, how we search through things, etc. I'm going to pass the mouse over to Anastasia O'Neill, the Digital Records Management Technician, and she'll give you a really good idea of how we use the software every single day, pretty much. So here we go.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for being here this morning. My name is Anna O'Neill. I'm the Electronic Records Management Technician here at the Albany County Hall of Records, and my job is basically to oversee the day-to-day operations of the county's Laserfiche repository, as well as working on planning for scanning projects that we want to pursue, both in-house and ones funded by a grant that would allow us to work with vendors to scan larger collections. And I'm also the first line of helping out anyone who is looking for some support if they have a technical issue with Laserfiche. I'm the first one that they can reach out to and either help them resolve the issue or point them to the person who's going to be the best one to solve the issue. So right now we are logged into the county's Laserfiche repository. As you can see, we've got lots of different agencies with lots of different series of records here. But I do want to point out that I'm logged in as myself with an administrator view, so that's why we can see everything. Laserfiche has a very detailed security system with lots of different tiers of users that can be custom tailored so that everyone is only able to see what they need to see. So that's why I can see everything right now. But the first thing I'm going to demonstrate today is some searches that we would do with Laserfiche in order to make it really easy to retrieve records that might not easily be browsed for, or maybe a researcher is coming in who only knows a little bit about the record that they're looking for. So the first thing I'm going to demonstrate is what's called a field search. And for that, I'll be using the City of Albany marriage records. After that, I'm going to demonstrate a full text search with our county clerk's deed records. So I'm going to go into the vital records folder and open up the marriage records. As you can see, these are organized by year, and they're not comprehensive until the 1940s. So a better example is the 1950s, and there's a folder for each year. Within the years folder, it goes alphabetically. And within these alphabetical folders, each record is organized alphabetically by the last name of the groom. So this does make it really easy to browse for a record if a researcher happens to come in who knows the specific year of a marriage they're looking for and knows the last name of the groom. But as we know, it's not always that easy. Someone might only know the bare minimum about the record they're looking for. So I wanted to give an example of how we would use a field search, how we'd use the metadata fields of these records as index fields to search for a pretty vague example of a marriage record. So I'm going to click on the advanced search button right here. And as you see, that changes the folder pane on the left into the advanced search pane. And there's lots of different ways to customize the advanced search in Laserfiche. You can use as many or as few search parameters as you'd like. So I'm just going to clear out all the ones that were applied for the last search I did. And I'm going to select the field search. This allows us to use any metadata template that we've created for our repository and basically fill in the fields that we want to match with the results that we're looking for. So right now I have the Albany Vitals template selected, but as you can see, we have tons of options for every metadata template that we've created. So we can search for virtually every kind of record that we have indexed with this tool. So I have the Albany Vitals template selected, and I'm going to search for a record that's from January 1st, 1950 to December 31st, 1955. So this would be an example where a researcher only knows a vague range of the record that they're looking for, 5-year range. And we're just going to search a full name. Somewhere in the full name is Stevens, because as I said, these records are indexed by the last name of the groom, and maybe the researcher might only know the last name of the bride. So we'll search for that. As you can imagine, this would be a really laborious search, if even just using electronic records, because you literally have to look page by page through 5 years worth of records, but especially if you didn't have electronic records and you had to focus on using microfilm or paper records instead. So you can see how much time this saved. This cut this down to a matter of seconds to complete the search. We've got 14 results here that we can easily look through, and I want to draw your attention to the bottom of the page where we've got the context hits pane. This is going to show us exactly where we're getting that search result for the search term Stevens. So as you can see, this is even going to pull up a result if the last name of the bride is Stevens, which is going to allow us to find something that we wouldn't have been able to easily browse for based on how our records are organized. So that's how a field search works, but as Ricardo mentioned, we also have documents that have been processed with OCR technology and Laserfiche, and that allows us to perform a full text search. So the best example of that is the County Clerk Deeds series. As you can see, our deed books are organized by book number. Within each folder, we've got an individual file for each book, and each file is over 500 pages long. So we've kept basically the original arrangement of the paper records. This proves useful to us a lot of the time because many researchers who are working with deeds do know the exact book and page number that they're looking for, but once again, oftentimes people only know the name of the property owner that they're searching for, or maybe they only know the address that they're interested in looking up. So this has made the OCR technology incredibly useful for this collection because even without knowing a book and page number, we can very quickly and very easily search simply knowing, in my example, the name of a property owner. So I'm using the common search bar, which is in the upper right-hand corner here. This is not an advanced search, it's just used to search either the file name or any full text that has been recorded about that file. So I'm going to put my search term in quotes to make sure the first and last name I'm searching for are together in the search result. And I'm going to type in Harold Perlman. And once I hit enter, I should get a few search results. So I've got 5 search results here. This gives us the name of the five volumes that his name appears in. And once I sort through these, I can see the context hits on the bottom that are actually giving me the surrounding text around my search term, which is really helpful because say we're looking for Harold Perlman and his wife, Natalie. Now we know right away this particular deed is the only one where we see those 2 names together in context. And if we click the context hit and open up the actual file, not only has it opened up the deed book, it's brought us right to the page we were looking for, and it's highlighted where our search result text is occurring on the page. So you can see we found the deed where Harold and Natalie Perlman are buying lot number 7 on Betwood Street. Now that I have this file open, I do also want to point out some of the really useful exporting and sharing features that are built into Laserfiche. One is that you can print right from Laserfiche, and you can easily select just a couple pages from each document to print. Of course, you wouldn't want to print out the whole 500-page deed book, but the other one that is very useful is that you can easily email pages of a document right within Laserfiche. So if I open up that email pages window, this is going to give me the option to select a page range. Right now it's defaulted to the page that I'm on, but I could easily add that page in the next page as well. And if I clicked create email, it would open up a blank email message in the default email client on this computer. And that would have these 2 pages attached to it as a PDF attachment. So this is really useful for responding to researcher requests via email. Makes it very easy, very efficient, and very intuitive. So that wraps up my demonstration of searching. But the next thing I wanted to show was an in-house scanning project that we're working on right now. And this has been a really significant project for us because it involves one of our largest and most popular collections of records. That's our naturalization records. The Albany County Hall of Records holds all the naturalizations that were completed in the Albany County courts, and we get requests for these all the time because they're such a valuable genealogical research. Now, these records were actually already scanned 15 years ago, and that is because they are so popular. But recently, last year, we discovered that there is about a 10-year range where the entire naturalization record was actually not fully scanned. The naturalization consists of 3 main components. That's the Declaration of Intention, the Petition for Naturalization, and the Oath of Allegiance. And in the case of this range of years, from 1895 to 1906, only the Oath of Allegiance had been scanned, which was certainly frustrating for researchers because of all the components of a naturalization. That is actually the document that gives the least amount of genealogical information. So we definitely wanted to move forward locating all of the petitions and declarations of intent from that time period. And we are currently working on scanning these in-house. And after they are scanned, they're imported into Laserfiche. And once the documents are in Laserfiche, we assign metadata to them to make them easy to search for. And we also combine the newly scanned records with the records that have been scanned from 15 years ago. So now finally we have a full document that covers the entire naturalization paperwork for each individual. So as I mentioned in this project, we are scanning the records and then importing them into Laserfiche. So while Katie demonstrated for us scanning a record using the built-in scanning interface of Laserfiche, I'm going to demonstrate importing from a file folder. So I'm just going to select two of these naturalization documents, and I'm just going to drag and drop them right into Laserfiche, and that allows me to import them very easily. Right now, it's already prompting me to assign a metadata template to the records, so I'm going to select from all the templates we have, and I'm going to select naturalizations and intentions. If I wanted to, I could type in as much metadata as I want right now for each record that I'm importing. But what I'm going to do is actually click Apply these properties to all entries imported in this batch. That makes sure that both records that I've just dragged and dropped in will have the same metadata template. But if I typed in any metadata like last name or first name, it would apply that to both records. And since these relate to different individuals, I won't do that. But I will type in inventory control number because these both came out of the same box. And just to note, inventory control number at the Hall of Records is very similar to what other organizations might call barcode or accession number. So once I type that in, I'm just going to hit OK, and the import will continue. Now you see both of these records are now in the folder in Laserfiche, and we can open them up and take a look at them. So I'll open up this one first, and when I bring in the scan to Laserfiche during this project, the first thing I like to do is use the thumbnail pane on the left-hand side here to quickly look through each page. Each page has been numbered, so this allows me to very easily check that the entire document has been scanned in and that everything is legible, everything is complete. So I'll keep that in the back of my mind to make sure I approve this for our quality control process, which I'll show you in just a minute. And I'll start typing in the metadata manually for this individual. So I'll type in last name, first name. I'm going to skip over certificate number, which we added to this metadata template because some naturalizations have this, they do not in this time period. I'm going to type in the date. I'm going to type in that their application status was approved. And then this last field here is QC approval, and I'm going to mark this approved. We wanted to definitely add this, this metadata field into this metadata template when we planned on doing this project, when we custom added this QC approval field because we knew this would make it really easy for the person doing QC to very quickly generate a list of any documents that the person doing the scanning might need to revisit and scan again using a field search, just like I just demonstrated. So this has been a really useful way to use the metadata field, not just for searching, but also for our workflow process. So now that that's all set, I'm going to save this metadata and close out of this file. And I'll just demonstrate adding the metadata to this document once again, just to make sure everybody saw the whole process. So once again, I'll look through all the thumbnails, make sure everything is scanned correctly and legibly. And I see that this one has no mistakes, so once again, I'll mark it for QC approval. And then I'll type in the metadata. I'm going to save that file and close out of it. So that covers importing the newly scanned records that we are scanning currently, but I also want to combine these records with the oaths of allegiance that were scanned 15 years ago. So I've got these two individuals' oaths of allegiance in this folder here. Once again, I'm going to drag them and drop them right into Laserfiche. And this time I'm not going to add a metadata template because I know that I'm just going to combine these records with the ones that have already had metadata applied to them. So it wouldn't be very efficient to add metadata twice. So once these records are in, you can see because they do not have a metadata template applied to them, the thumbnail next to the name of the file looks a little bit different from the one that does have a metadata template applied to it. So that allows you to really easily distinguish between types of records. And the process of combining files in Laserfiche is very easy. You just click on the file that you want to add to another one and you drag it on top of it. And that's going to prompt me to insert the pages of this file onto the one that I just dragged it onto. So I'm going to insert them after the last page, and I'm going to hit OK. Now, because Laserfiche has detected that I have removed all of the pages from the Oath of Allegiance file, it's prompting me to delete the document because it recognizes that it's just an empty document with no pages in it anymore. Now, it's worth mentioning that I only get this prompt because I'm logged in as myself. I have administrator privileges, which includes delete rights. If I was logged in as someone with maybe someone who has the right to combine files but does not have the right to delete, Laserfiche would not prompt me to do this. It would just keep the empty file and let someone with administrator privileges go in and delete it later. Well, I'll do that with this document as well, the same process. Insert this after the last page, hit OK, delete the empty document. And you'll see when I open up one of these now and I scroll down to the end of the thumbnails, there's a new document at the end, and that is the Oath of Allegiance. So finally, after 15 years, we've got a full and complete scan that covers all of the naturalization information of these two individuals. So one last step I wanted to show in the workflow process of our current naturalization scanning that we're doing in-house involves the file names. So as you can see, the names of these two files are somewhat illegible if you don't really know why this file name was chosen. This is actually the inventory control number of the box that these papers were in, followed by the number of the folder within that box. So this is a very useful file name to have at the point in the project where we are right now, as scanning is still going on. It allows me to really easily see how far we've progressed in the scanning and very easily check the scans of the file against the data entry that we have regarding this box and folder. But once all the scanning is done and we want to have these naturalizations organized as an easily searchable database or an easily browsable database, it makes much more sense for the file name to relate to the name of the individual because we are virtually always searching for naturalizations by name. So Katie mentioned in her portion of the presentation Laserfiche workflows. We've also used Laserfiche workflows to create an automated set of steps that will rename this file without any room for error, basically. We have created a workflow where Laserfiche will identify the first and last name metadata that I just entered for these files. And once it locates that metadata, it will change the file name to last name, comma, first name. And we've set this workflow up as what's called a business process. That basically means that this is something that we would want to be able to start manually from within the Laserfiche application. You can see I just right-clicked on this ECMS webinar folder I'm in, and one of my options here is Start Business Process. So I'm going to click that, and that shows me all of these automated workflows that we've created that we might want to apply to these documents. So I'm selecting the Rename Naturalizations workflow, and I'm going to hit Start. I'm going to confirm that I want to start it. And you can see within literally seconds, these file names have been changed to something that is much more legible, very easy to browse, and it's going to make it extremely easy when we have a request for these naturalizations and we want to find them very quickly. So that wraps up my demonstration. I'm really excited that I got to show this, this naturalization project we're working on, because this has really exponentially increased the amount of information we're able to provide about naturalizations in this time period. So I'm really looking forward to being able to finish up this project. We're already halfway through. So thanks everyone for listening, and I look forward to all your questions. And thank you to the State Archives for having us present today. And I'm going to pass things over back to Maria so she can wrap things up and we can start our questions. So I'm going to pass the controls over.
Thank you, Anna. Another fantastic presentation. That was really great. Thank you very much. So our webinar goes until 11:30. Before we jump into questions, I just wanted to present to you some considerations that may help you determine whether an ECMS is right for your organization. So, for example, we've got on the left-hand side, if your office needs to reduce the amount of time needed to retrieve a record or add value to your documents, for example, by reformatting text-heavy documents like meeting minutes and making them keyword searchable, as Ricardo mentioned, using the optical character recognition feature, and thus making them more useful, an ECMS might be something to consider. Or if you wanted to provide access to individual documents to multiple users, or you want to share documents more easily and avoid creating duplicates, or if you need to improve or create some work processes, for example, maybe a process for FOIL requests or for purchase order approvals, then an ECMS might make sense. It might not make sense, though, if you don't have many documents to store, and it may be more cost-effective to just manage those records as paper. Or if you do have a lot of records stored, but you don't retrieve them very often, then it might, again, be more cost-effective to keep them in their existing format, or maybe even consider microfilming those records if you're trying to save some space. Or if you have a low value to the documents that you're considering, and by low value, I mean maybe they're just short-term. They have a short-term retention period, so you're not going to be keeping them very long. And then maybe most importantly, if there's no one to support the system, if there's no one to administer it, and or if there's no funds to pay for support, then an ECMS may not be something to consider. And just a few other considerations. The TCO, or total cost of ownership, which is on the left-hand side of the slide. These are costs that fall into three categories. So one-time costs, which are the software up front, the hardware, or any hardware to support the software or needed to use the software, like a scanner or a server, any initial infrastructure upgrades to support the system, initial training, and also system administration. Those are one-time costs, and those are costs that you can use State Archives grant funds for. Ricardo mentioned that those were some that the county used to implement their Laserfiche system, and Dover did as well. And the second category are ongoing costs. So you want to support and maintain the system long-term, particularly if you're going to use it to reformat permanent records. So continued upgrades, continued training, and also continued system administration. So those are ongoing costs. And a general guide would be to plan on spending 2 to 3 times the cost to purchase and implement the ECM software in order to maintain it. Then the third category are conversion costs, and those costs are the costs involved in reformatting paper records to digital if you choose to use the system that way. And those conversion costs are in addition to the one-time and ongoing costs. Those conversion costs, though, are something that you could also use State Archives grant funds for. And some other considerations on the right-hand side of the slide that you want to make before purchasing a system is you want to determine which departments need to use the systems and which don't. And maybe these considerations can be made based on the considerations on the previous slide. You also want to determine a system administrator, so somebody who's going to support the system for things like adding and training new users, setting up templates for each record series, kind of like the roles of Katie and Anna and Ricardo. You want to determine who will maintain the technology. Are you going to pay continued support to a vendor, or are you going to train somebody internally to do that? Also, policies and procedures are essential to establish. You want to, for example, have rules about what records should be added to the content management system and how they're going to be added. And if you're planning to convert paper records, you want to make sure someone is going to be able to organize and purge those records first, because you don't want to waste time and money scanning obsolete records. So these are all considerations that you want to make before buying a system. So now we're at the questions point of the webinar. And Rich, if we've got questions in the chat box, would you please read those questions? And before you do, I just want to point out that on the slide includes email addresses for everyone who participated today. So you can also send us questions directly if you prefer.
Okay, Maria. We have a question here from Tom. I'll just start at the top. Which ECMS technology is the shared services using? Maybe he means grant recipient.
We are using Laserfiche. Or is that, maybe I could get clarification.
Okay, Katie, we'll see if Tom types something else in. But Bob, let's see, no, we'll skip that.
I'll just add, Rich, both of these systems are shared. Dover with 3 other municipalities, and Albany County with the city and the town of Colony. So they're both using Laserfiche, and they're both shared systems.
Okay. Corey asks, is the public-facing view of the ECMS considered ADA compliant? We are looking for ways to improve how we are sharing our public documents.
Our website is ADA compliant. I don't know if the public portal, since it's really access to documents that can be downloaded or exported, emailed, those things. I don't know, I guess.
Okay, I have a question here.
I could add to that,
ahead,
that at least at the State Archives, when we add documents to our website, we have to make them accessible. So we have to take extra steps to make sure that the documents that we add are accessible.
Okay, I have a question here from RC. Are you scanning your documents in the PDF-A format or via another archival format? If so, what process are you using to verify that the document was scanned in the correct archival format, thereby allowing for the original paper to be destroyed?
Mm-hmm. In Dover, we scan only as TIFF files. That was how it was set up at the very beginning. And in addition, an add-on module in our shared ECMS is the records management module, records retention management. So as documents, as the infrastructure was created, we have the retention built in to the infrastructure so that retention is set kind of by the hard wiring of the program. So, for example, vouchers have already been assigned the records retention of 6 years, and then further, we can cut off after 6 years, and then with town board permission, we could actually delete them from the system. We haven't done that yet. We haven't actually deleted electronic files from our shared ECMS at this point right now. But because we have the records retention module that, you know, more or less stores the retention along with the document, we have that security because we purchased that records retention module.
Laserfiche just by default automatically converts anything you scan into it with the scanning module, or if you try to drag and drop something into it, automatically converts it to TIFF for storage within Laserfiche. So TIFF is the default there. It won't take a PDF of any kind and turn it into a TIFF right away.
For the naturalization project that I was showing, we are scanning those as PDF, and then if we export them out of Laserfiche to store them on our server locally, we are also exporting them as PDF, but that is because those documents are not intended to be the copy of record of the naturalization. They are just meant to be access copies for when we're responding to requests.
Okay, I have a question here from Daniel. Any experience with including born digital records in the ECMS?
For us, on our end, the City of Albany marriage records that are the ones that have been done date forward, those are born digital, so they create those documents digitally and then drag them straight into Laserfiche and update the metadata manually to keep the repository up to date there. And they've had great success with that workflow, so that's gone well for them.
In Dover, we have our building department folder, our Dover parcels folder, integrated with Municity, which is a building department software. So some documents that are born digital are imported directly into Laserfiche, so the building department can view a born digital document right next to a scanned document.
Okay, Renee asks, what do you do with documents that require redaction prior to scanning for the public? Is there an original password protected folder for the agency?
In Dover, we are able to redact right in Laserfiche. There are functions to be able to do that as the document is retrieved and prepared. So I would say we more often would find the document and then redact and then export it for perhaps a FOIL purpose.
We also, at the county, we have the redaction component built into Laserfiche.
Okay, Renee asks, when emailing attachments as demonstrated, what format does it attach as? Is it a PDF?
It is a PDF, yep.
Yes.
Okay. Agnes asks, is the information stored on a server, in the cloud, or something like that?
In Dover, we have a server system, both on-site server backup and then also backup off-site in another part of the country.
Here in Albany County, we have the server within our network as well, although we are in the sort of foundation, groundbreaking stages of moving to the cloud-based version, just because with all the expansion we've been doing, we're going to run out of space, physical space for hard drives and things like that on our server. So I think financially it makes more sense to move to the cloud now rather than stack hard drive upon hard drive on our machine and then eventually have to move to the cloud anyway.
Okay, Tom asks, where do you specify the retention period? Is that stored in the template?
I believe it's actually part of the records retention module, so that is an add-on module to a Laserfiche system. So the template is really designed for search and retrieval purposes, not so much, at least in Dover, not for retention.
It's not part of the template, but Laserfiche does have the option to assign a retention period at the folder level. So you can, if you have the records management module installed, you can create a folder that everything in that every document in that folder has a set retention period, so it can be set at the folder level.
Okay, Janet asks, when you bring in the new ECMS system into your agency, what is the timeline for training and effective use by the system by staff?
That's a great question, because the training really never ends.
That's very true.
As our shared ECMS began to grow, the idea for new projects in different departments, expanding within our town as well as in our neighboring communities, just continued. And then as staff get more involved, they can take on more responsibilities to do scanning across departments. Or, of course, then there's new folks that come in that need to be trained and just the general troubleshooting. So I realized early on that it really was a journey. It wasn't a destination we were going to.
Every new project, every new grant that we've done, our vendor has been tremendous at scheduling training sessions with the new agency or the new municipality that's coming in and working with the employees there to sort of bring them up to speed as quickly as they can and as efficiently as they can. They schedule 2 or 3 days of training with them, working directly with their records once the records have been moved into the repository, so they get sort of a hands-on experience with their own records. And then, like Anna was saying, Anna is sort of the first line of defense whenever there's a technical question or any kind of, how do I do this, how do I do that, is there a way that we can do this? So Anna will get that question and she'll answer them, or she'll ask me if I have any ideas, and if I'm drawing a blank, then our vendor again has been really great at taking any questions from us and giving us any support that we have. They've walked us through a lot of weird ideas that we've had about how we can we do this really off-the-wall idea to, rename all these files immediately using a workflow? Oh yeah, here's how you do it. And then, so we've learned quite a bit just from asking our vendor any strange question that comes to mind. They always have an answer for us.
Nancy asks here, she said, Ricardo mentioned using OCR for text searchability. Does OCR work with handwritten documents?
No.
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah, it only works with typeset documents.
Yeah, so all those deeds that I showed, that range of 1,000 deed books, they are all typed, which is the reason we are able to so successfully use OCR to search those. Maybe someday.
I hope so. That would be fantastic.
And a question here from Tom. By digitizing these files, are you able to now purge the paper documents even if it's within the retention period?
We are able to, yes.
Yeah, for example, the pistol permits that we have, we just got the okay from the county sheriff's office to, once we've finished, QCing them for the 7th time to make sure we've got everything. They gave us the okay to destroy those, so yeah. As long as, all the agencies that are responsible for those records are on board, purging them physical records is definitely kind of the goal of this ultimately, is to free up some space out in the warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there was a question from Hope if the participants can have a recorded session of this webinar. And yes, of course, as a matter of fact, probably within the next day or two, the recording will be posted up on our website and on the New York State Archives YouTube page. So we have all of our webinars are recorded, and you can find them by either going to our website, looking under workshops and recordings, or you can just go Google New York State Archives YouTube, and you'll find a whole lot of great information, all of our webinars, and as well as other videos that the New York State Archives produces. And let's see, I don't see any other questions.
Oh, I see a couple, Rich.
Okay.
It looked like Tom also asked, will the OCR technology work on importing already digital documents, PDF or .doc, or just upon newly scanning paper?
Yeah, you can absolutely use it on already existing digital documents. The way it works is you can, in the Laserfiche repository, once you've imported it into the repository, you can right-click on a single document or highlight a whole bunch of them and right-click and hit the Generate Text button, and it brings up the OCR module, and you can set all the parameters that you want for how fast or how slow you want it to go, how high quality you want the OCR to be, and it will run in the background. I usually would run them overnight just to, not bog down the server too much during the daytime when everybody was using it. But yeah, it'll absolutely work on anything that's born digital but wasn't scanned directly into Laserfiche. Yeah.
Yeah, and probably if they're digital, it's closer to 100% perfect.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It would work even better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You have to take into consideration the older that your documents are. OCR may not be, 100% reliable, but it certainly can make a huge difference. Looks like someone asked, what does the system cost and a retention with a retention model included? Okay, so
sure. So I went back and looked at our old grant from 2017. We paid about $70,000 total with the grant funding for the software, the licenses, and the training and everything. That was all inclusive. It came in just under $70,000 total.
In Dover, we applied for the grant in 2015, and we purchased Laserfiche Rio, and included the public portal, and included the records retention module. Also, I believe 18 licenses to begin with, and then also having some 3 commercial feeder scanners, and we applied for a grant for $150,000. I don't know the individual breakdown, and probably since that time, things have changed enough, but we were able through the grant to get exactly what we needed for our 4 communities to be set up and working towards our individual goals.
Yeah, if you apply individually, you can request up to $75,000, and if you apply as a shared service, you can request up to $150,000, as Katie mentioned, $150,000. It also looks like someone asked, Agnes asked, how do you deal with records that have a retention period but may be considered an historical document, therefore should be retained past the disposition date?
When a record in Laserfiche reaches its retention, the system does not automatically delete the record. The person who is designated as the records manager needs to go through the records and review them and then approve the disposition of the record. So I assume that's something that would be done at that stage of review, that the records manager would be keeping an eye out for anything that has that historical value, and they, of course, have the option to choose records that will not be destroyed.
Yeah, I'm guessing you could reassign retention too.
Yep, you could change the retention period to permanent and move it to a new location on the repository, anything like that at that time once it hits its disposition date.
I would consider that the same way that we would manage our paper-based documents, that if we feel that it has historical significance, we would just retain it until a further time where maybe it would be reconsidered.
Another question came in. If the scanned document doesn't become the document of record, then what is done with the paper record? I can tell you that you should determine which is the document of record, and if it is the paper record, you would be maintaining the paper record.
Yeah.
Yep.
And maybe you'd be using the scanned document for access, like the Hall of Records is doing for some of their record series. Actually, most of the ones that they have been discussing.
We'll lock up all those paper records in the vault and try not to touch them.
And for Dover's building records, we still retain the paper records, but the scanned records are really for convenience for internal use. They're not available to the public. So, you know, there are times where paper records and electronic records are going to coexist, but the benefit of having them searchable, getting to a document quickly is a benefit over going to a paper search.
Rich, do you see any more questions? That was the last one I saw.
Let's see. Yes, I do believe there's a couple more here. Yes, I got one here from Rebecca. Again, it's a question about the session be available. The session recording be available? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Will the question session be available on the recording? Yes, it will. The recording will include all of this banter here and the questions being posed and answered. I got one here from Colleen regarding vital records such as death certificates. What is the best way to file in Laserfiche?
With the municipalities that are part of our Laserfiche ECMS for vital records, typically we file each type of vital record separately, of course, birth, death, marriage, burial records, and within each of those types of records, we typically go by year, and then within each year, alphabetically. I would say that's been pretty consistent for every type of vital record we have. And then once again, we use a pretty standard template across most of the vital records that we have in the system to make searching much easier if we don't want to have to browse for those records every time we retrieve them.
In Dover, first of all, you have to ask permission from the state to digitize vital records, as far as I'm aware of. And then our template includes first and last name, date, and maybe in the case of a marriage record, both partners.
And I don't see any other questions, Maria, and I was going to add that we are at about 2 minutes till 11:30.
Okay, and just to comment or add to what Katie said, the permission comes from the Department of Health with the agency that oversees vital records.
Yes, thank you for that.
Okay, well, we have reached pretty much the end of our time as well, and I just want to thank Katie and Ricardo and Anna for making time to present your systems. Those are really fantastic presentations, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, yeah.
And thanks for everyone for joining us today and all the great questions.
Okay, Maria. Well, that concludes our presentation, everyone. Thank you very much.